this is big. This is really big.
Fish on First Live, presented by La Pop. Be sure to catch them on Instagram and in Doral for the best chiropractic adjustments you could possibly ask for. My name is Azgi Zoot, and joined by always is Eli,
Nice try.
founder and managing editor for Fish on First, Kevin Brawl, and intern Mike Anthony Valdez. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I guess we have some breaking news to start this one. It's being reported by Jeff Passan that the Los Angeles Angels have placed starter Lucas Giolito, relievers Matt Moore and Reynaldo Lopez, and outfielders Hunter Renfroe and Randall Grichuk on waivers, essentially allowing any team in a playoff race to pick them up. Your guys' initial thoughts?
This is cool. Well, not cool for the Angels. This is demoralizing for the Angels because several of these guys, most of these guys, they just acquired at the trade deadline to be reinforcements to buy now, being Giolito from the White Sox and Lopez from the White Sox and Grichuk from the Rockies. And now, as Passan elaborates in further tweets, like these are salary dumps. They're out of it. Their playoff odds are less than 1%. So all they can do at this point, now that the regular trade deadline has passed, is they can salary dump what these guys are still owed heading into free agency. All of them are pending free agents. Why it's relevant for the Marlins is that the Marlins are a team that is still very much in contention and yet has potentially some needs that could be addressed by these guys. All you'd have to do is take on the money that they're owed. And it doesn't really take much imagination to see how potentially these guys could be upgrades over what they currently have. So that is the overview of why this is significant.
It's also crazy to look at it, just I would say a month ago, they traded Giolito. They acquired Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez from the White Sox, and you gave up your top two prospects in your organization in Edgar Quero and Kai Bush, and those guys have been great since going to the White Sox organization. And Quero's probably going to be a big leaguer by next season, and Kai Bush is probably going to be a big leaguer by next season as well. So it's crazy that you're giving up. You're kind of just saying you're giving them up for nothing at this point. You're just going to throw them in the waivers. And then obviously Matt Moore was a nice free agent signing. I'm surprised you just obviously you were in it at the time. Your team's kind of struggled. Ohtani can't pitch anymore. Trout is out. Is going to be out for a little longer now. He's back on the IL. But man, it was the writing was on the wall. They weren't going to make the playoffs. They're in a very good AL West with now the Mariners having, I believe, won a good amount of games in a row. You have, the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros were always really good. You just had you didn't really have much of a chance. I believe there were 6 back at the time or 5 back when you were originally when the trade deadline occurred, and they still decided to go out there and make these moves. And, they are not looking really good whatsoever now. I mean, we'll talk about it soon, but for for Miami, we'll see. Giolito's obviously the big name there. I believe he's had it's been a roller coaster of a ride for him with the Angels or his short stint there. But obviously Matt Moore, another lefty. I don't think you want to add that. Reynaldo Lopez is the name that stands out there, and Hunter Renfroe, Randall Grichuk. I will take any of those two if you're looking for a position player. I don't think Miami should. Obviously, I believe how this will work is it's just by order of worst record going up, and Miami would stand kind of in the middle there. So I don't think any bad team's going to take Lucas Giolito. Hopefully not. The hope would be that Miami would be one of the first one of the first contending teams to actually be able to get Lucas Giolito. I wouldn't say for free like Jeff Passan put, but it's basically a salary dump in a sense. And he is a pending free agent, so it makes sense to obviously make that move now and just, worst case, you re-sign him if he dominates with Miami or let him walk.
Yeah, you mentioned, Kevin, it is a salary dump, no doubt about it. They have fallen to 4th in the AL West, with the Mariners now taking the top spot in that division. They are 12 and a half games back of the first place Mariners and 11 and a half back of the 3rd wild card spot. So things are just not going swimmingly for those Angels. And I guess it makes some sense to just free up some money for this offseason and next year. Mike Anthony, any last thoughts on this crazy turn of events before we get started on last
Yeah,
series?
it's crazy how much they missed. I mean, they're all good players and they all went to the Angels. I guess they're cursed. You gotta probably imagine that Perry Manassian is gonna be fired this offseason. And then the biggest question is, do you trade Trout next offseason? That's the only way you could probably build around or build this organization back up with all these misses they had this year.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond just saving the money, by doing this, you kind of signal that you're unlikely to re-sign any of these, and that gets you thinking who's going to be on the team next year. They do have some interesting young players. Of course, they have Trout under contract still, but considering how poorly things have gone, and obviously the expectation that Ohtani will be going elsewhere, yeah, pretty interesting. It's an embarrassing turn of events, though. Any way you slice it, the context of getting these guys to improve, giving up prospects in the process, and now not even in a position to recoup really any value in return. It's pretty humiliating for them. There are teams, no matter what happens with the Marlins the rest of this year, we've had plenty of understandable frustration about how this team is collapsing. As we know in this moment, they themselves are unlikely to make the playoffs, but the fact that it is still a possibility and that they didn't give up quite as many assets to improve their team as the Angels did, it could be worse. It could be worse than being a Marlins fan right now. I would posit that an Angels fan's existence is definitively worse right now and for the near future than that of the Marlins.
I would agree. That was a conversation we were having in California that, like, we say Marlins fans are cursed, but look at the Angels. Look at the Angels and what a tough time they've had. I guess from now we can go into the last series in which Miami lost 2 out of 3 against the surging Washington Nationals. Kevin, I believe you were there on Friday. Yes, you were there on Friday. Tough games. Miami still did not score a lot of runs. They were able to salvage game 3 of that series, but still only scoring 2 on a Jorge Soler 2-run shot. What are your thoughts on the entire series?
Yeah, just not what you wanted to see. Obviously, when we were coming into this series, there was that possibility where we said there's a chance that Washington definitely does take 2 out of 3. They I believe they had won like 9 out of 3 and they were 9-3 in their last 12 games or something like that, or 7-3 in their last 10 games entering this series against Miami. Game 1 was just not good. I mean, Washington got it going right away. CJ Abrams had a great game there. He created that first run. After that, Braxton, I believe he gave up the 2-run bomb to Carter Kieboom. He gave up one more run, and then after that, I think Jorge Lopez gave up some more. And I want to say Steven Oker gave up some more. So Braxton was good. It was another quality start. Aside from that, Miami was only able to score 4 runs in, I believe, the 7th inning. That was it. That offense was extinct for the most part. Game 2, Yuri was phenomenal. That was another, I believe, David Robertson disaster class, I think we could start calling them, where he blew the lead Miami had. Yuri, another great start for him. I think that needs to be mentioned. And then finally, game 3, thankfully, Miami, the bullpen game out of all games, is the one that they won thanks to a Jorge Soler 2-run bomb. Overall, pretty disappointing series. This is like, that's like one of those series that you tell yourself, like, man, you really need that series. And I was talking to someone, I was talking to Josiah Gray on Friday, and he was like, we like these type of series because this is how we can mess with the playoff standings. And this, especially, a team like the Marlins who are in the NL East. So they came in hot and they took 2 out of 3, and they've been one of the hot teams since the deadline. I think they've been over 500, either over 500 since the second half or the deadline, but they've been really good. And, shout out to them.
Yeah, it was a tough series. Eli, anything to add on those 3?
What sticks out is the way that all 3 of the Nationals starters in this series, it was Trevor Williams in the finale, then Jake Irvin, I'm pretty sure that's his first name, but not sure. He's that anonymous to me.
Yeah,
and
Jake Irvin. Yeah.
Yeah, and Joan Adon, for all 3 of them to have quality starts, like in very quality starts against the Marlins, speaks to how disappointing this offensive rut has been that continues dating back to the previous. It's been a week and a half now since the middle of that Dodgers series. Every single game, especially early in the game, struggling to score runs. We have a down the dorsal video breakdown going out tomorrow about that 4 runs in game 1. Because if you look back at it, the main reason they scored as many as they did is because of a missed call against Jesus Sanchez, who should have struck out, and instead his at bat continued. He got a 2-run triple to get them on the scoreboard. It was another really, discouraging weekend for the offense, and Soler kind of saves the day in that final game. He's been great. There's the names that they have available now in this lineup should be better than the production says. But you can point the finger in a lot of different directions. There are guys that have been slumping recently. There are others that are just not doing it in the right situations where they're just scoring less runs than their abilities and their scoring opportunities suggest that they should. And they need to, if they couldn't do it against the Nationals, that's one of the weakest pitching staffs that they're going to face for the rest of the year. So there's just not a whole lot of reason to be optimistic about this offense moving forward now that you've had basically a week and a half of them just not scoring much at all.
Yeah, Mike Anthony, last thoughts on this disappointing weekend series?
Yeah, I was there for that game one, and the Marlins hitters are making Adon look like prime Pedro Martinez. When I got there, I think he had a 6.30 ERA coming into that game.
A 7 ERA.
It was 7, so it was already down 30 points by the time I looked. Through 7, he had no hit. They were just making bad pitchers look too good, and you're not going to win a lot of games against bad pitchers if you're just not having good at-bats and good approaches throughout the game.
And just to add to what you said, because this is something Skip mentioned on Friday, just the inability to get to a starting pitcher. I think we saw that obviously in game one. I mean, out of all the games that you would have thought maybe Miami would take, I think everyone thought game one was almost a lock. You were facing a dude with a 7 ERA who you've had success up against him in the past. And as he said, that was Yohan Adon's best career start. I think you would have to say, I think he struck out maybe I want to say 3. He got a lot of, Miami did get a lot of hard contact, I believe, off of him in this game, but just not enough to obviously put the ball in play. That 7th inning is obviously where he saw all the success. So I would read, there we go. I was going to say, you should read Alex Krutchik's article on Miami not being able to attack starting pitchers. Obviously, in that game, those 4 runs didn't even come off against Adon. They came off of, I believe, Mason Thompson, I want to say.
Yeah.
Reliever for the Nationals. So, and the same was with Cole Irvin. And you could even make the case with Trevor Williams. The only run came in a Jorge Soler 2-run shot. So it shows
he was blowing 90 past guys. Like Berger had one at bat where he just threw 3 straight fastballs up and in, and he swung through all 3 of them. It was like 88, 90, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. We'll see. They're facing Savali tonight, and I believe it's Eflin tomorrow. So they've got their work cut out for themselves.
Yeah, like I reiterated a few times, just the crazy stat to me that since the LA series, since the beginning of that series, they've scored 8 runs against starting pitchers. 8 runs against.
And now with the whole Gonsolin Tommy John, I think Craig was right when it was a fluke game.
Yeah. I didn't count that one. It was still since the second game, since the doubleheader in LA. Yeah. I think it was 45 innings against starting pitchers, and they've scored 8 runs and 5 games worth of innings against starting pitchers.
And even in that game, we scored 11 by like the 3rd, and we didn't score again the rest of the game.
Yeah, they came in bunches. The 3rd inning was their main inning where I think they hit 3 home runs, Stallings.
And then I think at a point there was like bases loaded, and we're all getting nervous. Like if we blow 11-run lead.
Jorge Lopez entered the game, and people got a little bit worried there. But from there, I guess we can just go into the upcoming series. The Tampa Bay Rays, Sandy Alcantara against this team has had some success through a complete game. They allowed 1 earned run against these Tampa Bay Rays in Tropicana Field to help split that series. Are we optimistic that the Marlins can do some of the same and split another one?
Yeah, you have to look at what Sandy did against this same Rays lineup just, I believe, a couple weeks ago. I believe a month ago against the Rays. Obviously, I'm not sure what the Rays lineup looks right now, but obviously they don't have Wander Franco for reasons we will not be mentioning on this stream. They called up a couple top prospects. I believe they had someone new at shortstop, so they DFA'd
Masabe.
Well, yeah, he's going to be pretty good. So this is if there's a game that you're looking to take, it's this one. Miami did have success off of Eflin last time, though I will want to mention, but he only went 2 innings. He had an injury that took him out of the game, so that's the big reason why they had early success. So obviously the Rays are a really good team. I believe they're second right now in the AL East. So you need to split. I mean, obviously you would like to get 2 here because you really need it, but if you could split against a team like the Rays, man, that's huge because they're one of the best teams in baseball, and it kind of shows you that you could get it going.
Bruhan starting at shortstop today, not Basabe.
Oh God,
Yeah,
and he's not that good either. No offense, but Eli, you're muted.
We'll get into the lineups a little bit closer to first pitch with them. But as we talked about, the fact that they've struggled so much against ordinary starters recently, now they actually face back-to-back two very good ones. Savali, if you lower the threshold enough in terms of he missed a lot of time with injury. When he's been healthy, he has the lowest ERA among American League starters this season. He's number 1. And that's probably the appetizer. I'd say that Eflin is even the guy that I would expect even more from in the second game. So the way that it lines up is not great. The reason why the Rays kind of fell out of their division leading status and why their playoff spot is maybe a tiny bit in doubt, but only a tiny bit, is just because of the rotation injuries that they've suffered. The fact that they've lost, leading off with Shane McClanahan, but even before that, Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen. So at the moment, it is a very thin rotation. Unfortunately for the Marlins, when it's such a short series, you are susceptible to getting a couple nights of real starters. And as it turns out, the way that the schedule lined up, they get 2 of the definitive top 3 that are still available for this team. So even though I think this is sort of a vulnerable team, the way that it lines up for the Marlins, it won't be easy. They have to legitimately take down, they have to do what they haven't been doing recently, which is putting together productive at-bats against legit starting pitchers in those early innings.
Yeah, Eli, it's interesting because when the Marlins faced Eflin in Tampa, they got to him. They got to him pretty well. And his issue to that point anyway was pitching on the road. So he was great at home. So you still think Eflin is going to be the tougher test on the road against this team when that they've already got to him already once this year?
I haven't looked too deep into that. I do remember that injury with Eflin where it was on a fielding play that he kind of tweaked his ankle, something like his ankle. And that may have affected his pitching. You don't really know one way or another. So I don't put a whole lot of credence into that previous matchup with him. I'll look at the bigger body of work with him, and that kind of sets the expectations and the relatively low expectations that I'd have against him the second time.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I guess now is a great time to enter our press box report. The Marlins do play in about less than an hour. We have Mr. Noah Berger there at the press box at Lone Depot Park. Some bad weather hit South Florida just about 10 minutes ago, and it was actually raining in Lone Depot Park. Noah, can you confirm this? Oh, what a Kevin.
That's not me. I'm not touching it.
Once I'm in the stream, I can confirm it. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Softly, yes.
Is that Jonathan Anderson?
That's John
What's he
Anderson.
doing? He wants in on the fun. Yeah, it was raining a little bit inside through the seams
wild.
of the roof, which is normal, but just the amount of rain is a little bit extra today. And everybody say hi to Daniel. Hi, Daniel. But no, it's all right. I got to meet Harold Ramirez, which I'm very happy about.
Oh yeah, this is the first time you covered the Rays, huh? Oh no, that's
I-
a lie. You saw him last year.
Yeah, but I never got to meet him. So
Okay, that's fair.
Danny introduced me to him, so I was very happy about that. Yandy Diaz is a character.
He's funny.
You mentioned Cueto.
Oh, Cueto threw a live BP.
Cueto right BP.
Garrett Hampson took him deep.
Your boy Angelo looked really good, Kevin.
Angelo
This
I'm
bingo.
not even gonna try it. He's in line to start, but when he comes off the IL, Cueto himself mentioned Saturday. But I don't know about that. Confirmed. The Skip was asked about possibly going to a 6-man rotation, and he said it's not just a possibility; it's something that they've been talking about. It's not likely to happen. I don't know if that involves Lucas Giolito, but you never know.
Oh my God.
But
I wish.
I will say that my jaw dropped to the floor when I saw the news that the Angels had rage quit.
Yeah, rage quit is a good way to describe it. Was there an injury report, Noah?
There
Brief one.
was. It was Trevor Rogers is now throwing at 75 feet, which finally we we're hearing him throwing. He's alive. Everybody relax. Speaking of alive, Sixto Sanchez is scheduled to throw a live BP in Jupiter on Thursday. 20 pitch live BP. Does that mean anything? Absolutely. And then Cueto's 39 pitch live BP. There was some stuff with the cutter that wasn't going well. He wasn't locating it well. Said, but everything is on track for him to return very soon.
Yeah.
To clarify what you mentioned on Cueto, he is eligible to come off the IL on Saturday. Given that he just threw today, and you do the math, he's not going to be fully rested by Saturday. He'll be fully rested by Sunday. So that is my projection for when he would make his return to the roster. People like having fun with this September call-up conversation. I guess we could get into that a little bit more in the next stream because I'll be the one directly leading into it. Unfortunately, for people that are like dreaming of the prospects coming up, they have more than their fair share of pitchers now. They're juggling. And so with Cueto's return seeming to be pretty imminent, I just want to remind people that he is coming back and that will be a spot. And so they'll have to do stuff around him. And the only thing to add here is that George Soriano is back from paternity leave. He was away for that Nats series because of it, but now he's back. Poor Tommy Nance goes down, even though Nance didn't pitch in a single game while he was on the roster.
He still had a locker today.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Nance is one of those September call-ups. Another right-handed arm that has a devastating curveball that can really help his bullpen, whether it's to eat innings or pitch in somewhat leveraged situations. But we'll see. Noah, anything else from Daniel maybe about Marlins returning home? How are the vibes?
Vibes are all right. There are a couple of guys that look like they may have gotten sick recently. I'm not able to say who, but there's definitely a bug went around the clubhouse. Looks like they're getting over it. And I just want to point out, if it hasn't been mentioned yet, with the waiver claims for these Angels players, it's the American League gets the first bids. So it has to go through the whole American League before any National League team can put it in.
I don't know if that's accurate. I think that used to be the case. I don't think that's still accurate. I think at this stage of the season, it's now just in terms of ascending winning percentage, both leagues combined. I could double check, but I think that is not the case. I think the Marlins are a little bit closer than you might think to that priority.
Yeah,
I'll ask around about it and find out what.
Yeah.
Who told you that American League stuff?
Eli from before.
It used to be that way. But
remember we talked about it.
Yeah, I believe they have modernized that. Instead of segregating the leagues, I don't think they're segregated anymore when it comes to waiver claims at this
I'll
stage
ask
of the
around.
season.
I'll get to the bottom.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll see you guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Noah and Daniel, I guess.
You have a prediction video?
Yeah, the prediction video has it. You did send the prediction. Yeah, he sent the prediction video.
Oh, swell.
All right. See you guys.
See ya. Oh, we never. Yes. Okay. I guess we can get into Tampa Bay yet, or is it almost our break?
Well, you didn't submit to me a flipped fish candidate here. Otherwise, this is where we'd be doing that. I guess quickly we could check into the live chat if there's anything that people brought up that we didn't get to, aside from Sixto slander and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is worth mentioning that Trevor is throwing, but Kim did not seem very optimistic that he would return this year. She spoke to the small group of reporters and just said if he does return, it's icing on the cake, but she doesn't expect him back. And it's just what's important with him is long-term for Trevor. So that way he's 100% for spring training in 2024. Anything else that really stood out to you guys in that brief injury report?
Is there anything else in here? No, that's about it. Again, we covered it on Cueto that he should, the next time he throws it will probably be major league game for the Marlins. Yeah, I know Sean wants to flip fish, but they just played the Marlins a month ago.
Right.
So I don't know. For old times, I guess we could look at Isaac's tweet from last month and see who was mentioned in there.
Yeah, I was about to do a new one right now, but you know what? It's not fun. I think I started with Logan Morrison. If I remember correctly, yes, I did. So, Sean, why don't you give us one anyway? And each one of you, too. Mike Anthony, give me a quick one.
Jimmy Yacobonis.
Oh, very good. Very good. Kevin?
Let's go with Nick Anderson.
Yeah.
It's not that crazy, but
World Series. All right.
unless you want to go Fernando Rodney.
You can go with anyone.
Fernando Rodney makes a lot of sense. Disaster class. Why not?
I'll go with Sean Armstrong. We'll be singing this series. You remember
Oh,
Sean
yeah.
Armstrong?
I was thinking of him, but I'm like, he's there now. So I was like, let me think of someone who was there.
I just
Long
wanted to
time.
bring him up because, yeah. So I think Noah's now confirming to us that the waiver claim priority. This is important. That it is now just about ascending record, and all the teams are grouped together, American and National League. So the Marlins are right in the middle of the pack there, and they are among the teams that are still in the race in either league. They had the worst record. So because these guys have been waived at this time, they're going to be picking ahead of all those other National League wildcard contenders and all the American League ones, because all those teams at this moment are slightly ahead of them in the standings. Again, for players that are all pending free agents too, like it just does not behoove teams that are out of the race to pick up these players because they're all free agents to be. But before going into the break, yes, a note on Sean Armstrong. You remember him last year. He was on a minor league deal with the Marlins. He made the team out of camp as a reliever. He looked kind of decent in camp, and then he was terrible when the real games began. He had a 10.80 ERA in his 7 relief appearances. They cut him. They cut him about less than a month into the season. The Rays got him back. He was okay for the Rays the rest of the 2022 season. And this year, Sean Armstrong has a 0.92 ERA. He's been in like a hybrid role. Now that we talked about the lack of rotation depth that the Rays have, they've been using him as an opener occasionally. And the mix between being a reliever, an opener, and a conventional reliever, it's amazing. An 0.92 ERA, a FIP that is only at 2. That is incredible. He is mowing down guys with strikeouts. He has incredible control all of a sudden. He's allowed only 1 home run in those 39 innings. Sean Armstrong.
All right. That's a great flipped fish. And there's a few. I guess Escobar does not count. Derek Dietrich does not count either.
Danny Echeverria.
Echeverria counts.
Evaldi.
Evaldi was on the Rays. That's right. I just remember him as a Yankee or Dodger. And just really quick to end on the Angels note, those 5 players that were put on waivers, each one of you, who would make the most sense for this team? Start with Mike Anthony.
For me, because I'm a huge fan of him in MLB The Show, Hunter Renfroe can play. Have you guys seen July and August for Brian De La Cruz?
Yeah,
pretty bad.
He is pretty much
combined 214 in 2 months.
Yeah.
So, and with Jeezy, that we haven't been platooning him without Avi, so I would but send down Hampson and bring up Hunter Renfroe if we could.
Yeah, I don't see them making any move forward. De La Cruz, like you mentioned, he has been struggling mightily, but I don't know if they're gonna send him down, obviously. But yeah, Renfroe offers light tower power. He looks just like Mike Trout, and he's got a cannon in the outfield. So Hunter Renfroe, he was honestly someone that I didn't think. I think the Marlins are gonna be looking at pitching, but yeah, he gives you some I don't know if much needed power anymore, but some lengthening of the lineup. Kevin or Eli?
I just want to say that Renfroe is sort of like a rich man's Avi. They have a lot in common, except that Renfroe can kind of still play, but they have a lot in common, both the strengths and the flaws in their games. And it would kind of be fitting to pick him up now that Avi is hurt and presumed done for the season. And he's somebody that also, because of the way that he's been struggling recently, part of the reason why their team as a whole has struggled, like he's not an everyday player, even though he used to be. He would slide into the Avi role. He'd be a platoon player, but I think he's a better platoon option than Avi was, and probably better than Peyton Burdick was. This is all just about comparing who they are versus what the alternatives are. And the Marlins have some alternatives between Burdick, between Dane Myers. Is Hunter Renfroe better than Dane Myers? I think so. At this moment, I think
it is.
Yeah, but so those are the decisions they have to make here. With Giolito, man, he had 1 good start with the Angels, 1 total. over this past month, and it looks bad because he allowed some unearned runs in the process. It's been such a disaster. I feel silly for thinking that he should be a priority for the Marlins back then with him, but that's compelling with Giolito to go to a 6-man rotation because the alternative is bring back up Edward. And I think I'd prefer Giolito over Edward because I think you could at least trust him to give you length and to throw a decent amount of strikes. Yeah, I like the upset. I like both the floor. Well, the floor is pretty low based on how he's pitched recently. But I'd have to say Giolito to me is the most. I know we're hungry to improve this lineup. It doesn't feel that it's good enough. So I'd have Giolito 1, and I'd have Grichuk and Renfroe really close behind them.
Really?
I see Giolito somehow falling to the Dodgers.
Well, he'd have to fall all the way.
I don't think he will. I think
through
it's going
everybody.
to take him before.
Yeah, I would expect
I just pulled up. We're the first team because the Yankees are pretty much out.
Right. Yeah, I think the Yankees
So
are. I don't think they would go.
oh, the Giants. The Giants would probably snag him. The Reds would snag him. They're after us.
Right. All I remember is the
Boston would do it.
playing in Chicago and us being so enamored with all the bullpen options that Chicago had. And Reynaldo Lopez was one of them who strikes out 11 guys per 9, is having a good season. I think he's the number one priority for me. Obviously, he's a bullpen arm, so he's not going to have much of an impact as an everyday guy in the lineup or as a starting pitcher. But I think he's someone that imagine you put him back there in between Scott, Robertson, and Puck and Nardi. I think that helps.
Who would you take out? A long man?
Soriano. Soriano's been great. You could really demote Robertson down to like the 6th, 7th inning role if you wanted to. There's some options. No one's untouchable in that bullpen aside from Nardi and Scott. So I think they really could make room for Reynaldo Lopez. I think that's the type of pitcher that they need to miss bats. They don't miss a lot of bats in that bullpen other than Scott and Nardi. They really don't. And Robertson before the trade, obviously, but that just hasn't happened anymore. But with that, I think we're done with the Angels and we can go into our break, which we're halfway through with the show, of Fish on First Live.
And we are back. Fish on First Live, presented to you by LaPop. That is LAPOP. And we are going to get it going with previewing the Citrus Series, part 2 of the Citrus Series. I think we could just go right into the lineups. Obviously, a lot of differences from what we saw last time. This time around, obviously, new trade acquisitions. We're going to be seeing one of them tonight for the Rays. Aaron Savali making the start, coming over from the Cleveland Guardians. And if we could get those lineups out, nothing different from the Marlins side, besides the fact that Yuli's starting for the first time, and I think you mentioned this, Eli, in like 9 games, something like that.
First time in a week for Yuli.
Okay.
And he's only played, I think, twice in the last 11 days. He played one of the doubleheader games. He's only played one other game since then. And you understand why, because
pinch hit against the Padres also.
Yeah, he's been pinch hitting a few times in between then. In terms of actually being in the lineup, this is about as limited a role as he's had all season long. And yeah, due to the alternatives that they have with Soler and Bell being arguably the 2 best hitters that they have, Berger in that conversation as well. Yeah, there's just not a whole lot of room to put him in the lineup. So they make an interesting call putting him in against a righty. And I think this year he's been just as good against righties as lefties anyway. So otherwise it's almost exactly the lineup you would expect it to see, that they want to get Yuli an opportunity here.
And then looking at the Tampa Bay side of things, obviously they had their incident with the Yankees, but it looks like all the guys are fine. Yandy was talking to some Miami media today, and he was telling them how, I guess, his arm kind of got messed up from the hit by pitch, but he's leading off tonight for the Rays. Mike Anthony, what do you see from that Tampa Bay lineup that, at one point they were at the top of Major League Baseball. They were the best team in baseball. Obviously, teams are really good and they take over. Obviously, Houston, Texas. Now that Seattle Mariners are kind of up there, and the Baltimore Orioles are one of the best teams in baseball. And Tampa Bay's kind of fallen off a little bit. Their pitching kind of ruined it a little bit. Obviously, their rotation's taking a lot of big hits. You have Rasmussen. That was at the start of the year. He recently just lost Shane McClanahan to TJ. So just take us through that Tampa lineup.
Yeah, their lineup is good, man. Especially Josh Lau having a breakout year. He has, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a 4-something batting average with 2 outs and man on second or scoring position, which is amazing, which is just clutch. Obviously, they're giving, I guess, the rookie Basabe a day off and putting Brujan, which is probably the only guy that doesn't have any, colors on his things here. But they're a tough lineup to hit, to pitch to, especially Yandy leading off, who's going to be probably top 5 in MVP votes.
Yeah. For me, the name is going to be Brandon Lau. I think he's one of my favorite hitters. Like, I just love his stance. I love his swing. I just love everything about him. A power hitting second baseman. And of everyone in Tampa Bay's lineup, he's got the best numbers against Sandy. He's 5 for 12 with 3 extra base hits, a couple of walks, only 1 K, and 14 plate appearances. He's been fantastic against Sandy. I think he did get him for a couple of hits earlier in the year in Tropicana. So I think that's the name to circle for Tampa Bay. Obviously,
Not the one run.
Kind of breaking news. Harrison Bader just got placed on waivers. So if Miami wants a center fielder, there you go.
He looked good when the Yankees were here. He looked kind of good.
He did, right? Yeah.
Too many injuries, though.
Muted Eli.
Harrison Bader is one of those players that always looks so much better than he is. Like when he looks like he should be a lot stronger than he is. He has all these balls that just die on the warning track. He's good defensively. Like, I guess that's one aspect of it. But, with the Marlins, I guess we didn't touch on Jazz much on this stream. But Jazz, like, his center field defense is better than you could have hoped for this year, but his offense is still not really coming around. He's hitting closer to his career averages than he was obviously last year to his breakout season. And that's been a pretty big difference. He's continuing to bat in the heart of the Marlins lineup, even though, the production is kind of middling right here. Yeah, the more you look at this Marlins lineup, it's like, outside of Arise and Soler and Bell and Berger, all these other guys are kind of suspects.
Along with Bader, Carlos Carrasco, Mike Clevenger also go on to waivers. So,
Mike Clevenger's a good one.
Clevenger, I know you'd mentioned Eli.
He's an interesting one. He's an interesting one where, in terms of on the field, he makes a lot of sense. And he's been, compared to someone like Giolito, he's been pitching better than Giolito when he's been available this year. But he also entered this year coming off a hazy domestic violence situation, and just generally he's not regarded as a good teammate at all in his past, even before coming to the White Sox. So he's not a highly regarded character guy. And I think that's something that they'll take into consideration. That's the reason why they couldn't get anything in return for him at the trade deadline, the White Sox. He's a pending free agent. All these players you just mentioned, the Angels guys, plus this new round of waiver dudes, they're all pending free agents. And that's why they're on the market now, because they're going to be gone after the season anyway. But Marlins got to weigh these options. Talking about this rotation and what it looks like in order to, if they go with a 6-man rotation, or even if they want to look at somebody that's an upgrade over Cueto, with Cueto being in the 5th spot in this rotation right now, just on the field, I think Clevenger would qualify as an upgrade over that. But at the same time, it's you're taking on more money and you're bringing in somebody that hasn't been with the team all year, and he's coming from. Most people would say the White Sox are the most toxic organization in baseball right now. The Angels are most dysfunctional and disappointing, but the White Sox are the most toxic one. You got lucky, Berger fit in really well. Berger was kind of above the stench in Chicago. This is going back even to Giolito as well. Like, I don't know how much of a chance you want to take with these other White Sox players just coming from an awful situation that they've been in.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the pitching matchups here. Obviously, we have Sandy going up against Aaron Civale in game 1. Eli, talk to us a little bit about what Miami should expect from Civale. Having an underratedly good season for this Cleveland team. just comes to Tampa. I believe he had one shaky start, then had another pretty good one. I believe this is his third start, I want to say, as a Tampa Bay Ray, and
This will be number
facing
5 for
Five?
him as a Ray. Looking at it, yeah, his first one was arguably his worst. In his last start, he struck out 9, but he also gave up 3 earned runs in the process. Only went 5 innings. He is. We touched on it on top. Like his ERA is the best in the American League among starters that have any substantial workload going on. At the same time, you look under the hood and it doesn't look quite as promising. And what the Rays have decided is that they just have a shorter leash on him. He's not going to go deep into this game. If everything goes perfectly, he could go 6. As we saw with the national starters, those guys were pretty underwhelming. But Joan Adon, he went 6 against this Marlins team pretty effortlessly. So, yeah, you can't rule out a long outing considering how this Marlins team has struggled to get things going early on. But generally speaking, they have him on a pretty tight leash, and especially coming off an off day, I think most likely you're going to see only 5 innings of Savali. That they're the third time through the lineup, they will not hesitate to go to their pen. They like what he does early in games. He throws a lot of strikes. As you can see, his walk rate is kind of his most redeeming quality, is that he attacks his own. Yeah, that being said, he's having a career year. You know, he's not quite as good as his run prevention numbers would suggest here. This is definitely the more winnable game for the Marlins, considering what Sandy has done for most of the second half of the season.
And then obviously looking at Sandy, Isaac, just obviously we saw what he did to the Tampa Bay lineup a couple months ago. He's had his up and downs since I believe his last start was the infamous cooler beatdown. He also destroyed some seeds in there too. So what can we expect from Sandy? He's back home, which is good for him. He's facing a team that for the most part, I believe they're a pretty patient team. If I had to guess, I think Yandy and Randy, they both don't strike out at very high percentages. For the most part, I think the only 2 players that strike out over 30% are Jose Siri and Luke Raley. So pretty patient team for the most part here.
Yeah, I think the best thing about this is that he's back home. Like you mentioned, he's got exactly a 1-run differential in his ERAs at home versus the road, 3.61 at home, 4.61 on the road. And this is a team that he is facing again. So I don't know where you put the advantage on, for the team that's hitting or for the pitcher. So we shall see. He's definitely pitching in a more pitcher-friendly environment against this team. And it's been great. Like you mentioned, since his last 8 starts going into that San Diego start, he was pitching great. To ERA under 3, going deep into games, and he even went deep into that game where he struggled in that 7th inning, I believe it was. Gave up the home run to Xander Bogaerts, but he was really, really solid from innings 2 to 6 in that one, and that was just what you would call it an okay start for Sandy. So I'm expecting a really nice start from him tonight.
Now looking to game 2, obviously Miami wasn't able to get the full Zach Eflin experience, I guess we could call it, but they're pretty familiar with him. He's been in the NL East for a good amount of years now. Mike Anthony, what can we expect from someone like Zach Eflin, who unfortunately, as we mentioned, only went 2 innings in his last start against Miami, but for the most part he was all right.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a better start than he did last time. If he can go 5 or 6 innings, he's a sinker slider guy, and we're a team that hits the ball on the ground a lot, doesn't really strike out. So it's going to play to his strengths, and they're a good defensive team. So, but I do feel like that's the game we might win, just because the Marlins win the games that feels like we're not supposed to and lose the ones that we should. I just feel like Luzardo's going to come and have a better start again, having the extra rest because they switched him and Sandy. And I just feel like the hitters today are going to probably struggle because I don't think they faced Savali this year. And we kind of struggle weirdly against guys we haven't seen.
Yeah. And then obviously with Luzardo, this is obviously since the second half of the year, he's kind of struggled. He's just struggled. There's no other way to put it. He kind of mentioned it to tipping pitches. He mentioned that, his stuff isn't there. Eli, what have you seen with Luzardo? Obviously, he's had his up and downs, but for the most part, it's been really a lot of downs for someone like Jesus Luzardo, who's struggled in that second half of the year, dating back to the All-Star break.
Yeah, we dove more into that on Fishology last week about Luzardo, and we kind of predicted, I predicted that I didn't know what to expect just because it's kind of a multifaceted issue with him. He seems to be healthy, and his velo is still there. It's still one of the better velos you'll see from a left-handed starter. And he's coming off that great outing against the Padres. The Padres, though, being a team that this year has been kind of famously inconsistent and disappointing offensively. I don't know how much you read into that with him. He's the most shocking thing is how in the previous few starts he was so homer prone. This is a guy that that was one thing that made him really good last year and for a good chunk of this year as well, is that it usually is pretty hard to square up. It is shocking that he gave up that Astros start, especially the way that he started that game, giving up 3 homers in the first inning of that one.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that was really jarring to see from Luzardo, because the way that he has 3 or 4, well, you could say 3 pitches that are plus pitches at times between his fastball and his slider and his changeup, and he should be able to mix them in a way that keeps guys off balance. I would have to say that tipping was probably a factor in at least one of those outings, or if not that, then just game planning in particular from an opponent with that Astros team, just knowing what was coming. I feel like that was an important factor. It's hard to put your finger on, the fatigue aspect of this, the fact that he's pitching innings he's never pitched before. It's not hurting his velo, but it could be just hurting the repeatability of his mechanics and just leading to him leaving pitches in bad spots over and over again, more so than he normally would. As good as his stuff is, when he leaves it in bad spots, it just doesn't work as well. Yeah, what I'd noticed more, I guess the more specific thing is just his slider wasn't getting a lot of chases out of the zone lately. It usually is that devastating pitch where it looks like a strike, and then it dives down and in to righties, and guys just weren't offering at it quite as much as we're used to seeing from them. So that will have to turn around. I can't say I have a clear idea of what to expect from him, but as long as I lean towards being relatively optimistic that he's going to come out of this rut that he has been in for the most part. I think he's going to be slightly better in late August, September than he was in most of August.
Yeah, from what I understand, they did solve that issue, and it was similar systems to what the Yankees and Astros were doing against him, and they cleaned that up, and I wasn't surprised at all when he pitched very well in San Diego, and I believe he'll do the same thing against Tampa tomorrow. But you're right, Eli, it was a tipping situation, and they knew what was coming in both those starts.
Yeah.
Anything else we should touch up on this Tampa team? I think we do. I do want to give a shout out to Jose Siri. This guy's hitting 6th, 7th, 8th in the lineup almost every single day, and I believe he has 20+ homers. That's really impressive. I guess when we could talk a little bit about the Tampa way, because it does go to show you that this is a team that brings almost, you could say, nobodies. I mean, Luke Raley was a nobody just a couple years ago. Jose Sirius was in Houston. He hit that homer. He had the issue. He got traded. He comes to Tampa and now playing one of those big roles. Mike Anthony, you live in Tampa. I would assume you watch these guys a lot more than us.
Yeah.
You look at what they do, that lineup from top to bottom has, you could say, guys who produce.
And guys who can, guys who are athletes and play good defense. Sirius is probably going to rob a few. He robbed a few home runs last time. I remember one, Joey Wendell hit pretty far to the fence, and a few other ones that were just gut-wrenching that we felt like we could have won that one of those games in that series. And Luke Raley, I think he was, a Dodger before or Oakland?
He was in the wilderness. He was wherever he was. And he was not highly regarded.
I mean, we would love a Luke Raley with all that slugging and everything. So they just see stuff that that we don't and other clubs don't, which is funny that I mentioned this to a friend the other day, is they don't draft that well. They really don't. They just trade and sign guys who are free agents or minor league contracts just better than everyone else, because I could think of all their draft picks. They just end up trading, especially one of our minor leaguers, Xavier Edwards, who's one of my friends from high school. So they draft just as bad as kind of like the Marlins, but they just figure out how to do better trades and fleece other teams.
Yeah, you could look at this lineup as a perfect example. It was Lowe and Lau; those guys were draft picks, and that is it among the guys that are in the lineup tonight. That's it. All the other ones were trades. Brujan, I think, was an international signing, but not a draft pick. A little bit different.
And then you look at the guy from St. Louis. What's his name? The pitcher, left-handed, Liberatore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think whatever they just trade.
They don't miss him. They don't miss him very much.
They draft him and they trade him.
Yeah, and even especially you see it even more so with their pitchers, their entire rotation, even the injured guys, and especially the healthy guys. With Eflin being a rare free agent signing, Savali being traded. You look at their bullpen as well. Yeah, they thrive they do much better job at evaluating professional players and then making those deals than they do
And
at amateur
we can
level.
say that their international scouting is pretty good too. But
yeah,
whoever drafts for them, wow.
Yeah, almost as bad as Miami.
Almost, but not as bad.
And did we touch on Sanchi not being in today's lineup?
We did not.
Yeah, that's the one surprise. But I think part of it is wanting to get Gurriel in there after not very much playing time. It is unusual to see him sit. Usually when he sits, he's an automatic decision to sit against lefties. And of course, I imagine without even double checking that maybe Savali has reverse splits or something close to it that would kind of justify this. I mean, but otherwise, yeah, I don't read like too much into it. I'd like to see the way that DLC has been struggling recently. I'd like to see Sanchez starting more often than DLC does, and then if we have to choose one or the other in order to get Yuli in there and to play Soler in the outfield, yeah, it is a little confusing. But yeah, looking it up, yeah, even the platoon splits for Savali don't really illustrate much. He's pretty typical in that regard. So yeah, if you want to nitpick this lineup, I would say I'd rather have Sanchez in there than DLC.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, I don't know about the reverse splits but I do see that obviously Luis Ariz had a lot of history against Savali in that AL Central, and Ariz is 3 for 20 in his career against Savali, and Jacob Stallings is 3 for 4. So I thought, oh, maybe there is some reverse splits there, but no, sir. And yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather have Jesus Sanchez in there. He hasn't homer. I think he's been in a little bit of a homerless
power drought.
Yeah, right. He just has not gone. He's been at 10 home runs for a very long time. So maybe that's something that's going into this decision as well. Not that Yuli Gurriel is a power threat either.
I don't know if the Guardians have faced the Rays this year, but I guess with Bell, I guess he may have familiarity.
Yeah,
well, I guess Bell was with the Guardians.
Yeah, Josh Bell is 2 for 9 in his career against Savali. The only other person with a hit against Savali is Jorge Soler, who was 1 for 2, but no home runs in the Marlins lineup.
Berger never faced him.
No, Berger 0 for 1.
Okay,
with a walk.
That's weird.
With a walk and a strikeout. Yeah, that's a little bit surprising. And with Tampa Bay against Sandy, the person with the most plate appearances is Brandon Lau, like I mentioned, 5 for 12, and then it's Randy, who's 1 for 10 against Sandy. So not a lot of familiarity with these two starting pitchers.
So I guess with under just 10 minutes left, we could go into prediction time a little earlier than usual, but
sure,
we could take some time with these.
Should I give mine now, or I just send it to you, Mr. Eli?
You'll just go first.
Okay. Yeah, you'll just go first on the other side.
Alrighty.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
First.
Alrighty, it is
what our super subscribers got in here. A lot of splits, as we would expect. There's a couple missing from here that submitted it right before the start of the show. But yeah, we open this up to super subscribers and we keep track of your points all season long. To give a quick peek at the season-long leaderboard that we have here, Daniel Rodriguez in line to repeat, but it is as close as you could get up top with super subscriber Williams, just a point behind myself in 4th, Kevin in 6th, Isaac in 15th. Might be too late for Isaac.
No, there's plenty of series left. Just got to go perfect from here on out.
There's 10, including tonight. This is one of 10 that is still remaining here.
Got to go perfect from here on out, yeah.
Yeah, well. And we do have from the field, Noah and Daniel and a couple of their special guests. We will show you what they think of this 2-game Citrus Series set.
All right, Eli, we're here live at Lone Depot Park for the Rays Marlins series. We're going to be doing live prediction time. First up, we're going to give it to Noah. What is your prediction and MVP for the series?
I think the Marlins are going to split the series with the Rays, and I think the MVP is going to be Jake Berger.
All right. We have our first guest, Jonathan Anderson from 5 Reasons Sports.
I'm going to go with a split series, and I'm going to go with Savali getting that MVP.
Ooh. Andres Bolivar.
I think the Rays sweep the Marlins, and the MVP is going to be Isaac Paredes.
I'm gonna go series split. Sandy MVP, complete game, part 2 against the Rays. Eli, back to you.
Okay, so let's get that music rolling, and yeah, I think we know who's going first, Mr. Isaac Azoot.
All right. Well, the Marlins are gonna split this series. I hate saying this because I'm gonna go with the split. I'm gonna agree with Daniel for one. I'm gonna say that Sandy Alcantara will be MVP. That's it.
Alrighty.
Where do we want to go next?
Oh, let's go with Mr. Intern Mike Anthony.
All right. So last week I tried to go with the reverse jinx. So I'm going to go in the opposite. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go Marlins sweep, win 2. And my MVP, I'm going with Jazz because we need Jazz to get hot already. He's been cold for too long. It's time to get going for September.
Alrighty.
So what I wanted to do everything in my power to pick Harold Ramirez as MVP. Unfortunately, not in the lineup in this first game, and so that's a pretty big piece of the pie. That disqualified him, in my opinion. I'll go with the Marlins winning this series as well, sweeping the Rays for the first time in who knows how long, 2 games set, with MVP going to Jazz Chisholm Jr. Congrats to Jazz on the launch of his foundation as well. I think that brings some good energy, puts him in a good place mechanically and mentally entering this important series.
Alrighty, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to go split, and my MVP, I will agree with Isaac and Daniel, and I will go Sandy Alcantara. I think, complete game's coming soon, so I think it'll be tonight, and obviously had a lot of success against this Tampa Bay lineup last time. I think he'll do it again this time around. So I think if you guys don't have anything else to add, obviously, shout out to Jazz, obviously, for his foundation. I was there with Isaac yesterday. It was a really cool event. He was super grateful, spoke very well. Eli, Mike Anthony, anything you guys want to add before we wrap this up?
No, that's about it from me, other than we'll continue to process all these waiver claim stories. This is a very interesting issue. The fact that this news just comes out with only 2 days left in the waiver claim period that all these guys are available. And I think there's a pretty strong chance that the Marlins do something with that, considering the variety of guys that are now suddenly on the market from these teams that are out of the race. We'll have at least an article on that, and I imagine that'll be a big part of Thursday's stream coming up at 6 p.m. on Thursday for the National Series.
Yeah. Mike Anthony, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Nope. I'll be in attendance in tomorrow's game.
Okay. All right. So from Eli, Mike Anthony, myself, Isaac was in here, Noah, Daniel from the press box. We will see you guys all on Friday, 6 p.m.
Thursday.
Thursday. Peace out and go fish.